Maybe. What's up, Whisper Nation? It's Friday, and we're back. We're the Fantasy Whisperers. I'm Johnny Game Time Hicks. We'll be joined in just a second by Big Travy. We're talking about five wide receivers, not six. Maybe we might throw another wide receiver in there that we will briefly talk about that we want you to avoid this year in drafts because their draft capital is either too high for where they're going or they're going to just straight up bust. So we're going to talk about five wide receivers that you're not going to want to draft. Let your league mates draft those players instead right here on the Fantasy Whispers.
Right here.
That's right. If you're seeing my face or you're hearing our voice, we are the Fantasy Whispers. Go ahead and give this a share on any platform you are on. It would help us grow the brand and help us continue to give you all that information that we do every week. We're going to talk about those five wide receivers, but first I wanted to encourage you to share, like I just said, but also that the draft kit is live over at thefantasywhispers.com. You can check it out by clicking the link in our description below. You can check all of this out by going to thefantasywhispers.com. And if you're new to the Fantasy Whispers, consider following us on any of those platforms that are listed there on thefantasywhispers.com or in our description if you're watching on YouTube. We are here, Johnny, doing the five wide receivers that we have to avoid. It's a very tricky thing because we want to talk about these players and we don't want to come across that we hate players in any shape, way, or form, because we obviously do love players and we do love that they bring us these points in fantasy football. But we got to talk about guys you're going to probably avoid in this year's draft.
Absolutely. I can't wait. Some people are going to get a little mad because we got some big names in here. I'm not going to lie. We got some big names that we're going to be talking about today, but it just doesn't make sense at where they're going, Travis. So I'm excited. I do want to give a quick side note thing real quick. So I have my window open today. You could probably tell my lighting's a little bit different. It's more natural. It's a beautiful day out here in Phoenix. It's raining for once, Travis. So that's why the lighting. I just had to open it.
Monsoon this week, man.
Yeah. So I just want to mention that. So if people are like, hey, I can't really see the jersey on the wall, or what's the bright window?
Yeah,
and
where's the glare?
Yeah.
What's that on that fourth tab he's got open?
Yeah.
Seems something hub. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome in. Brett Johnson in the chat says it's time. Let's whisper. Brett Johnson, the reigning champ of our league of record. We've got 4 of you watching. Get those likes up. Before we dive into these top 5 wide receivers that we are not top 5, but 5 wide receivers we think that you should maybe consider avoiding this year, I want to talk about a few wide receivers that were just outside of the top 15, Johnny, and in our question of the day here. So last season, these wide receivers finished just outside the top 15. DJ Moore at 17, Keenan Allen at 18, and Amari Cooper at 19. So, Johnny, my question to you is, of these 3 wide receivers, which is the most likely to get back into the top 15 this year? And really, I want pure confidence here. The absolute guy that you would hang your hat on to get into the top 15 of those 3.
So I know most people would say, oh, they know me, right? They follow the show. So they probably think I would say DJ Moore here because I am a huge fan of DJ Moore. In fact, that's the jersey I should have had on the wall today, but I don't. And so most people would think I would say that, but I don't think DJ Moore is going to finish top 15. I have him just outside of that. But, Travis, I do think at the end of the year, both Amari and Allen Robinson will both be top 12 wide receivers. So that's not really helping Whisper Nation or helping you answer this question because I'm giving you 2 answers. So if I had to go with one single guy, I would have to go with Keenan Allen. I expect him to be the guy that returns to the top 12. The reason being is Amari Cooper has, CeeDee Lamb there. He's got Michael Gallup. He's got a lot of weapons around him. And I'm not saying, because he has a lot of weapons, he can't feast or anything like that. He will. I have him projected, like I said, as a top 12 wide receiver. I just I want to answer this for Whisper Nation in confidence. And if I'm going to put my money on any one of these 3 wide receivers to return that value or be in that top 12 again this year, it would be a guy like Keenan Allen, who's consistently done it on not only on a week-to-week basis, Travis, but on a year-long season-over-season total there. So I would throw my hat in the ring for Keenan Allen. What say you on these 3?
straight years. I got to just echo Keenan Allen here. 5 straight years of 140 targets. So no matter who the quarterback has been, Keenan Allen has been dominant in target share because he is dominant in route running and just a clean, crisp route runner. And now he's got Justin Herbert, who is throwing one of the most beautiful balls in football right now. And we expect that to probably continue. Now, he could regress at a level that's, bad for his ADP, Herbert. But that doesn't mean that we don't like Herbert to do great things for this offense, like Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen, and then Johnny's boy, even Big Mike Williams, who we've talked about as a breakout candidate this year as well. So I'm all in on that Chargers offense, and that starts with Keenan Allen as the second highest ADP of draftable players there. So
Brett
we're going to
Johnson.
talk.
Brett Johnson over here did. Yeah, I did.
The lighting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
He just wants people to know, look, this is why his face looks like it the way it does. No.
Yeah.
It looks beautiful.
That's why I have a little bit different kind of tan on my face. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, it's a tan? I don't know that you've been outside in years, dude.
That's actually
draft kit away in there.
Fair point.
All right, so before we get into these 2021 wide receivers to avoid, we got to talk about the draft kit, Whisper Nation. It's that time of year again, and our draft kit is officially here. It's going to be better than ever. And our draft kit is fully loaded with premium player projections and rankings, consistency charts, and over 3 years worth of data, cheat sheets, strength of schedule charts, and so much more. The TFW draft kit is available for an industry low $15 set. Head on over to thefantasywhispers.com and get your kit today. We will also drop the link in the chat. It's also in the description if you're watching on YouTube. There's a million ways to find it. If you're on Instagram, it's the links in the bio. You look, we're full Instagram influencers at this rate. You can get it anywhere. Soon we're just going to have a barcode on our head where you can just scan it, and that's how you get the draft kit. But until then, head on over to thefantasywhispers.com and grab your draft kit today. Johnny, it's time to get into this. 5 wide receivers that we want you to avoid in 2021. And I'm going to start us off, Johnny, with Tyler Lockett. Okay, currently ADP is in the that doesn't seem right. It says 12th round, but I don't think that's correct.
I got it.
The board as wide receiver 20. I know that much. And that just screams to me a little bit too high for Tyler Lockett.
505.
505. Thank you so much. Yeah. So coming off the board at 505 as wide receiver 20 is a little too rich for my blood here. And when we look back and we peel back the numbers, yes, he finished overall as a great wide receiver last year, PPR 8. We love that. But if you dig a little deeper, you peel back the numbers, there's a lot of inconsistency right there. It's tough to accurately project Lockett in fantasy. On one hand, you look at that wide receiver 8 finish at PPR and feel like wide receiver 2 price tag, that's an excellent value, right, Johnny? On the other hand, digging deeper, you can see that our guy Lockett only managed wide receiver 2 or better numbers in 5 games last year. Now, I understand the allure of a wide receiver who has averaged, who's played 100% of his games over the past 4 years. But only posting wide receiver numbers in 31% of your games is not consistent enough for those who understand, fantasy football is a weekly game here. We're not trying to just post numbers at the end of the year. We're trying to win each week. If Lockett was being drafted as a wide receiver 3, I could understand the allure. We'd see, he's going to give you winning weeks, and you could actually end up with a wide receiver 1 at the end of the year because of the numbers. But wide receiver 2, as far as consistency, he has just not been that. And so for me, I am just not a big fan of Tyler Lockett in redraft leagues this year because of where you're having to take him.
Yeah, I'm with you, Travis. I'm not the biggest. I think Corey in here, he's an absolute best ball player to me. I really like him in best ball because you don't have to necessarily pick and choose which games you're putting him in. It automatically does that for you. So you automatically just get his best games and it's already plug and play. However, when you're doing a week to week, like you said, it's so inconsistent. And the problem is, the big problem, Travis, is sure, you may know, so we might have some indications as to which games those could be or a better indication. But the problem is when he doesn't and you're still wanting to put him in because of his name, because of that upside, then that's where it becomes an issue to me. And, this is one of my favorite things to say, but it always ends up happening against me. So it'll probably happen again this year, but I am more willing to let somebody else draft him and just gamble that when I play him, they'll have him in and he won't be, one of those dynamite weeks. And if it is, it's just, that's the luck of the draw. But I generally like to go with consistent players, not boom and bust players, especially at that ADP. Now, if you're grabbing him, if his ADP was 10 plus rounds, then it would be a different story. But being that it's a 5th round guy, there's so much talent there, Travis, that I want more consistency. I want you to finish more as a wide receiver too, than just giving me, 4 weeks of, a wide receiver 1 overall and wide receiver, 1 through 5 overall. And then the rest are wide receiver 40. Like, that does me no good, especially in the 5th round. So I'm on that one.
Coming in here says Lockett helped me win my league 2 years ago. Had him and Mike Evans, my wide receiver 1 and 2. Super inconsistent though. But the best one, Groggy says, Johnny missed the party shirt Friday memo. Hey, Johnny, we know this. It's Aloha Friday, buddy. We need you fired up, man.
I know. I should have had that on.
Corey Dean talking about the upside. The upside's there. We know that. These are targets from Russell Wilson that are down the field. They're very, they're like dripping in fantasy gold when he throws these down the field. The problem is that I think DK's emergence has made Tyler Lockett a little bit more inconsistent because it could be any other guy during that span. And we just don't know just his history as a boomer bust guy. You're not going to get the wide receiver numbers each and every week. And you're going to have to draft him as a wide receiver 2, when some weeks he's going to finish outside as a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4, and that's going to really tank your lineup. And so that's what we're talking about here. Remember, guys, we don't necessarily doubt that any of these guys are going to have upside. I mean, some of the guys we're going to have on this list, all of them actually are really good wide receivers, really good fantasy wide receivers at times too. The problem is the ADP you have to take them at versus what they could do to your lineup when they don't hit, and the inconsistency. So that's the idea here that we're going with when we give you these guys to avoid. Johnny, you're coming in hot, though, with your second, or with your first guy, our second guy on the list, number 2, Justin Jefferson, who is now being drafted at the 3rd round, 302, wide receiver 8. And Johnny, for you, I think you're just asking the question, like, can we bank on the breakout in another top 10, top 8 season? Because when we digged in the numbers and we looked at the consistency charts for the draft kit we were putting together, which you can get at thefantasywhispers.com, what we saw was that Justin Jefferson maybe wasn't as consistent as we thought. So, Johnny, break it down for the people on why you're so inclined to avoid Justin Jefferson this year.
Yeah, just hear me out, Whisper Nation. I know this sounds wild. You're saying, why would you doubt a wide receiver who had the second best or only comparable rookie season to OBJ? And what did OBJ do that second year? He finished as a top 5 wide receiver. I get that. I get he had 7 games where he went over 100 receiving yards, and he is a stud wide receiver. I'm not doubting that, but he is a finesse wide receiver. He's not a big-bodied wide receiver. You also look at some of the other things going on with Minnesota. People are going to look at his schedule, and his schedule is very nice, especially in the beginning for wide receivers. He should start off pretty nice, and then people are going to be looking at me like, why'd you tell me not to draft him? Well, I'm gonna explain that. When you break it down, he only finished the season. Mind you, he finished the season as wide receiver 6 on the year. He had 88 receptions for 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns. That is a massive amount of yardage. You look at Pro Football Focus, and like once again, they have Justin Jefferson rated as one of the highest rookies of all time, only behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Adams. That's really good company. So why am I so low? Well, because when you look at his consistency charts, like we said in our draft kit, JJ only was a top 12 wide receiver, Travis, 4 weeks out of the whole season. He was a wide receiver 24 or better in 7 games. A wide receiver 2 or better in 7 games, half the season. And you're taking him right behind AJ Brown. Actually, hold on. I think AJ Brown now is behind. No, he's one spot ahead of Justin Jefferson in as far as redraft leagues. But you've got DK Metcalf going off the board after him, Michael Thomas coming off the board after him, Keenan Allen, who we talked about, coming off after him, and Terry McLaurin coming on after him. And all of those guys have proven it multiple seasons. all those guys are the number one for their team. And I'm not suggesting that Justin Jefferson can't be the number one, but he does have Adam Thielen there, who takes up a lot of red zone targets. He gets a lot of yardage as well. There's good chemistry between Cousins and him. I do expect this team to run the ball even more than they did last year, because they built that offensive line and built it to be more run heavy. And so I believe most people are drafting Justin Jefferson right now thinking, hey, Justin Jefferson's going to be a top 6 wide receiver this year. And I just don't see it. I think he regresses. Do I think it's heavy? No, I still think he ultimately ends up being more of like a wide receiver 2 for you. But again, we played this game for a long time. We've been doing this show for a long time, Travis, and I know how finicky fantasy players are, especially when they're not getting that return on their major investment. You're talking about early 3rd round. I've seen them many times come off in the 2nd round, and I just think that's really high for other pieces that are going around there and the consistency that you can get. I just want to point this out to seal my argument, Travis. Bobby Trees, who is going, several rounds later, 2 to 3 rounds later, he last year had the same amount of top 12 wide receiver finishes as Justin Jefferson, but he had one more game better as a wide receiver 2 than Justin Jefferson. So it's all about opportunity cost. You need to realize what you're getting and what you're paying for. And to me, it's just too much when you're looking at drafting Justin Jefferson that early. I just think you're just asking. You're just
paying for, Johnny. I just wanted to tell Whisper Nation, we got the super chat rocking. I just tested it out. $1. You can put whatever you guys want in there if you want to help continue to support the show. We appreciate it, guys. We're rocking.
Yeah, we got that up.
We're monetized, so I just wanted to let everybody know that we're doing that. But yeah, well, as Johnny said, it's really about the cost here. Speaking of cost, it's really about Justin Jefferson's cost. And right now, it just looks like you're having to buy him at his ceiling. Wide receiver 6 last year. He's wide receiver 8 coming off the board. Why are we buying him at his absolute ceiling right now without actually knowing if he can actually do it for a full season? Now, I will say he's got a lot of the tools. He was a nice prospect. He had production as a rookie, and he's going to be in a narrow target tree. We like all of those things. Adam Thielen still exists, especially in the red zone where Kirk Cousins loves him. So there's some things there to kind of scare you off of him at ADP. And I'm not fully with you, Johnny, but I understand the logic. I still think I'm going to have plenty of shares of Justin Jefferson this offseason, and we'll see how that shakes out. It'll be a good one. Listen, guys, before we move on to the rest of this list, Mock Draft Marathon is next weekend, next Saturday, 7/24, July 24th to July 25th, 10 a.m. Pacific to 10 a.m. Pacific. So make sure you're subscribed and you have your notifications turned on. People ask us, how do we make sure we're there? How do we make sure we're watching you guys? Get over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, and turn the notifications on, because you're going to know not only all the stuff leading up that week, we're going to have a bunch of announcements and stuff leading up that week, and you'll have that in your back pocket. But then when we do go live next Saturday, it'll automatically let you know, and we'll start a couple streams through that whole time, which means we'll notify you each time we're bringing somebody new on or what's going on. You'll know because you got those notifications turned on. So head on over to the Fantasy Whispers on YouTube. Search the Fantasy Whispers on YouTube. If you go to our website or Instagram, it's all in the bio there. And then make sure you subscribe and turn those notifications on. Johnny, we're going to keep hurting feelings with this episode. That's definitely what's going on. That's the theme here.
Yeah, we're going to make people sad today.
Before you guys leave, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe button, because we're about to say some names that may make you jump off the stream. CeeDee Lamb is the guy I'm going to talk about next, Johnny, and people are going to be screaming. I can already tell.
I'm
going
screaming.
Going in the 4th round is wide receiver 16. My argument for this and my last player is basically going to be like, why are we drafting these guys ahead of the other guy? It just does not make sense to me. Now, I was wrong already about this last year, and I just want to come full face. I was wrong about DK Metcalf versus Tyler Lockett, who I just talked about. I wanted to show Whisper Nation I can learn from my mistakes. Tyler Lockett is probably be avoidable. I did say draft him over DK. Don't draft DK. I was wrong there. The logic, though, checks out with CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. Look, I get it. CeeDee Lamb was really good. Caught 74 passes on 109 targets, 935 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns, a 71 PFF grade. and recorded the second most catches for a 21-year-old in NFL history. So that's a nice little trivia nugget for you. The problem is not that CeeDee is good or that he won't be the slot wide receiver for Dallas or that they won't throw a ton. It's that the fantasy football community is getting too savvy when we talk about these players and pushing that ADP up all the way into the 4th round as wide receiver 16. Once again, the argument that Johnny was making with Justin Jefferson is that I feel you're drafting CeeDee Lamb at his ceiling and not his floor, where we could be trying to make some value here. Whereas I believe Cooper is going to be the value for you now because he's going later. He's going a few spots later than CeeDee Lamb. And you look at Amari Cooper, 92 receptions, okay, on 128 targets for 1,114 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. Okay, he had a 75 PFF grade. If you look back at 2019, full season with Dak Prescott, Cooper finished 3rd in defensive adjusted yards above replacement. So there's a look. We've already seen all the stats to know that Cooper and Dak get along. It was a huge move for Cooper's career to get out of Las Vegas, then Oakland, and come to the Dallas Cowboys and actually become the number 1 for Dallas. We understand that's still the situation. Now, I'm going to say a caveat here, Johnny, and we need to keep an eye on Cooper's status because of what's going on with his ankle and things of that nature. So I will say a caveat. If we get to camp and it's still uncertain if Cooper's going to be starting week 1, then I understand that your investment in CeeDee Lamb. It makes a lot of sense. I've read a lot of the reports from some of these physical doctor or these sports doctors out there, and they're kind of confident that Cooper's going to be all right. He's a big-bodied guy that's dealt with injuries before and come through the other side. I love Cooper. The move to Dallas has been so good, and I think I would avoid drafting Lamb at that ceiling price when you could wait, get a guy like Cooper and get somebody else in the 4th round who's not going to be directly competing with a guy who's already proven to be the alpha.
Yeah, Travis, I'm not going to lie to you. When I saw the show notes and I saw that you had put CeeDee Lamb on there, I was like, what? Those are some fighting words, man. Like, how are you going to do that? But I do have to say, looking and breaking down the consistency charts, you're absolutely right. When it comes to CeeDee Lamb versus Amari, look, the injury concern and injury quote unquote risk, I guess, for Amari is slightly higher. I do expect in the future, like if you're in a keeper league, then I don't mind you taking a CeeDee Lamb over an Amari Cooper because I don't expect Amari to be in Dallas next year. I expect them to move CeeDee out to the outside as the alpha. So when you're talking about keeper, you're like, I want that value because future. However, in a redraft league where it's just a normal thing, or even dynasty, I guess I should say, I don't mind you taking CeeDee over a guy like Amari. But when it comes to redraft this year, Travis, I'm with you, man. I would stick with Amari because when you break down week to week, there were only like 2 or 3 games in which Amari actually didn't outscore a guy like CeeDee Lamb. So we tend to get caught up in the new and the younger. However, and I can't believe I'm saying this about Amari Cooper because Whisper Nation knows I'm not the biggest Amari Cooper fan, but I would agree with you that you should. Draft capital investment would tend to say, hey, go with a guy like Amari because he is going to be Dallas's number 1, whether we like it or not. But we do like CeeDee. I do like CeeDee Lamb still. I still think he'll be a top 24 wide receiver. But like I said, in my rankings, I have Amari higher, and I do think that he will remain the team's quote unquote alpha number 1 for right now.
All right. So we got to move on to the next guy. And this is one like where we know we're talking about with Amari Cooper and maybe even Adam Thielen to an extent, DK Metcalf. We know these guys are kind of the alphas of their team, and maybe Jefferson is now the alpha, but we'll get on from that one. Robby Anderson is a guy who was getting a lot more work last year than a guy in DJ Moore. And so, Johnny, you wanted to bring up Robby Anderson here going in the 7th round as wide receiver 33. With Darnold on board, a lot of people are saying, oh, the Darnold and Robby Anderson shower narrative. But really, DJ Moore was the guy they used as the deep threat last year. That could actually benefit DJ Moore more. That Darnold is on the team. And what say you about Robby Anderson and where he's being priced here? You just think that you're going to be avoiding more shares of Robby this year?
This strictly goes to it's just the draft capital and where he's going in drafts doesn't make any sense to me. And so I will be completely avoiding Robby Anderson. I understand Sam Darnold is back as far as pairing up with a guy like Robby Anderson. They played together in New York. But let's dive into those kind of stats, Travis. You look at what Robby Anderson did last year 7 games as a wide receiver 2 or better. Pretty good. We just talked about how Justin Jefferson, who you're taking in the third, was that same kind of production. He had 4 games in which he was a top 24 wide receiver, though, with Sam Darnold in 2019. Now, I do expect Sam Darnold to be better in Carolina than what he was with the Jets and under Adam Gase. I do think he is a better quarterback than most people give him credit for. He's still really young. However, you're just starting to look at what Robby Anderson did last year, and I just don't know if I see that same thing happening. He had 138 targets last year. Most he had was like 100 with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold loves to target the slot. We know that, and that's where I'm expecting DJ Moore to move over because they got Terrace Marshall. I think Terrace Marshall will then take the Robby Anderson role because he's a better contested catch wide receiver. They're going to want to make him go down the field. And Robby Anderson will still get targets. It's not like he's going to completely disappear. But the touchdown upside to me goes way down because, once again, we know Sam Darnold targets the slot wide receiver in the red zone 22% of the time. They've also got CMC coming back, who will take a lot of the red zone work, I'm sure, because they could be a little bit nervous. Sam Darnold will turn over the ball there. And then look at draft capital. Like I said, look at these guys that are coming off the board after him, Travis. They are coming off the board after Jerry Jeudy, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, Antonio Brown, Laviska Shenault, my guy BMW, Big Mike Williams. All those guys are coming off the board after Robby Anderson, and Robby Anderson is going to maybe project to be maybe the wide receiver 2 for this team. I think he'll be the wide receiver 3 on this team in target market share. So there is no way I'm touching Robby Anderson this year. He won't be on a single team of mine. Even if he dropped below those guys, I don't even think I would take because I don't see the upside there. I don't think this team will produce 3 wide receivers over 1,000 yards or top 30 wide receivers again with CMC coming back. So for me, I am completely off of the Robby Anderson train this year, and I hope Whisper Nation drafts those other guys, especially Jerry Jeudy. I'm huge on Jerry Jeudy. Brandon Cooks seems to be like one of the only targets over there. I do like Nico Collins for Houston, but we still don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. But still, and then Will Fuller, we've seen Will Fuller have more wide receiver 1 games than Robby Anderson. And yeah, I understand it's not Deshaun Watson throwing him the ball anymore, but Tua is not a slouch quarterback. What we saw from Tua last year is not what you're going to see this year. He didn't know the playbook. He came out and said that twice already. They quiz him on the playbook a little bit more. So I do think Will Fuller will still be a very nice value. So yeah, for me, it's just draft capital, man. It's just too much. And I can't project him to be a top 30 wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I get what you're saying here. I do think that there is a situation where Robby Anderson could have been just this secret weapon that we didn't get to see because of Adam Gase, and we got to see a lot of it last year. It's kind of weird, but I think we talked about the fantasy industry getting a little too savvy and catching on to things, and I think they've caught on to that, and that's why his ADP is so high. So even if you liked Robby Anderson coming into this year, you're not getting him at the Robby Anderson discount that you would want. You're getting him at what he did last year mostly. And we have a new quarterback. We have a quarterback that's consistently missed Robby Anderson in the past. And so like not really a great, counter argument to say that Robby Anderson is just going to be this absolute monster at ADP. I'm with you. I don't know if he's at the value here. And honestly, I just think it's a big fade for me on a lot of this offense at Carolina. I think we could be looking at a situation where this offense just isn't as good as we think. take CMC. You look at CMC coming in, probably going to take a ton of those targets away as well from some of these other guys. They had 3 guys finish with 1,000 yards, but with no CMC for a lot of the year. That's some of the things I need to focus on. And I just don't know if I can accurately enough project this offense with a new quarterback, a younger coaching staff, and of course CMC to soak up targets. It just seems a little bit tough to go in on a guy like Robby Anderson. So I'm with you there. I want to talk about Diontae Johnson, Johnny, as our fifth and final player that you may want to think about avoiding. I just look at some of the guys he's going next to. Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen going a little bit ahead of him. You've got Kenny G and Brandon Ayuk and Chase Claypool going behind him. Look, for me, there's competing narratives, of course. I want to talk about Diontae Johnson, what I saw. Concentration issues last year where he led the league in drops with 11. He's got all the talent around him in Juju and Chase Claypool, who I think is the bigger impediment to Diontae Johnson this year. And then you have the narrative, Johnny, that this team is supposedly going to run more. Najee Harris drafted in the first round. They got rid of Randy Fichtner, who was the offensive coordinator last year, and just let Ben kind of do whatever he wants, throw 600 times a year. So if we believe that we don't like Ben again in fantasy this year, and we believe we like Najee Harris because they're going to run more, wouldn't that mean those 140 some odd targets or whatever? I think he was like top 8 in targets last year, Diontae Johnson. If those targets are going to go away or go down because they're going to be throwing more, and we look at the fact that Chase Claypool, Johnny, only was in 60% snap share. So they're going to increase the snap share for Chase Claypool, which would take presumably some targets away from Diontae Johnson if that target tree goes down, because then we're running more. I just think there's a lot to say that you should probably be taking other wide receivers over Diontae Johnson, including his teammate, Chase Claypool, who you can get a round or 2 later and just go ahead and take the alpha, who I believe Chase Claypool is a better build as an alpha for this offense. He is a X wide receiver, prototypical. He's a big-bodied wide receiver, got all the touchdown upside in the world. Diontae doesn't really come with that touchdown upside. So, the argument you could make is PPR versus, standard or half PPR maybe for Diontae, but I'm rather taking the upside of Claypool or other guys around Diontae right now, because I just didn't see them be on the same page, Big Ben and Diontae, and I didn't see enough out of Diontae to really stand off that he's going to be an Antonio Brown-like smaller wide receiver that can get it done for this offense.
I love Diontae as a player. He holds a special place in my heart because I was majorly on his bandwagon last year. But what we saw last year was he was going in the 8th and 9th round. That's why I was so excited about his projections. Now, what makes me a little bit nervous this time around, Travis, is you're having to pay up for the production you saw last year. I mean, rightfully so. That's not a shock to me, right? What's a shock to me is more so the new coach that's coming in. I'm not exactly sure how he's going to involve both Diontae and Chase. Like you said, I do expect Diontae to still get a grip of targets. I do think he'll still technically be the target leader in this offense. However, you talk about how they're going to use him, how they're using Chase. I just think the value is better for Chase. And, I would put Diontae number 2 on this list, but again, you're having to pay number 1 for him in the 5th round, especially with other guys going around him. There are a couple of guys that I like a little bit more, even Jamar Chase, right? Jamar Chase is a little bit more of a gamble, but he's coming off the board 1 spot behind him. And I just think that Jamar Chase probably has a clearer path to a lot more targets and more consistency there. And, Brandon Ayuk, he has major upside to me. And so I just I tend to like some of the other players a little bit more where Diontae is going right now. So I am on that board, unfortunately, reluctantly, because Diontae is a boy of mine and I do like him a lot and he's fun to watch. He's really, really fun to watch, but he is going to be a little bit inconsistent this year and you might get a little bit frustrated because of, the other weapons. I do think that the drops will be we saw that get fixed a little bit. There's also wide receivers that we don't complain about drops, and they're right up there with him. Tyreek Hill, he is second on that list in drops, but we don't say anything. We're taking him off the board at, wide
Physical
receiver 2 or
freak.
3.
DK
Yeah.
Metcalf, same thing, physical freak. But that's
Right.
why I can look past those with those
Right.
guys, because they dominate the field in another way. He is a tactician. If we had Keenan Allen suffering from drops like Diontae, we would be complaining about it, because his whole deal is get open, possession receiver, over the middle, do the intermediate things that you need to do. Diontae is in that similar build where he's a tactician. He's going to run great routes. He's going to get open. That's why he got so many targets. But he's got to catch those targets, Johnny. He's got to come down with them. And I think that's where I kind of differ on, because Ian Hardens did come on our show last week and say, hey, look, that's his big thing. We don't harp on those guys for drops, but I think those guys are a little different, man. They're showing us other spectacular plays, contested catchability, deep threat kind of thing.
The one other thing I will like to mention on like the drop situations, I was reading an article, and apologize because I can't remember who wrote the article, but they were talking about how actually, they looked at data, and it's actually more wide receivers drop the ball, closer to the line of scrimmage than wide receivers that are the ball is being pushed down the field. And so, the other big thing that you tend to watch, and, there was a player or somebody on Twitter that had mentioned this about Saquon Barkley, about how he dances a lot. And that's really frustrating because he tries to go for the home run play. Well, that's Diontae in the wide receiver position. If you watch a lot of his stuff, he was dancing a lot around once he got the ball because he was looking for kind of like that home run hit. And I don't know that he's like necessarily needs to be that type of player. Maybe they correct that and they're just like, hey, get the yardage that we need. When we run this play, you don't have to dance around and try to make that big play. But again, when you're looking at draft capital, that's what we always go back to. And that's why we like to do this show. And people do give us some flack for it. But again, Whisper Nation, we're only here to help you guys and try to help you avoid some stressful situations later on down the road during the season.
Yeah, speaking of which, we want to thank everybody that was in here. Corey Dean, Brett Johnson, Do It 420, and now V Lock-In says, having Zeke and Waller or Gibson and Kelsey in PPR, he says. Johnny, I'm going to let you answer this one. Who do you think you'd have, Zeke and Waller or Gibson and Kelsey? It's a good one.
This is a great one. I love me some Gibson. I really do. I think that he will get a lot more targets this year when it comes to receiving out of the backfield. We saw J.D. McKissick get over 100 targets. I don't see that happening again.
Oh, did you hear the news? McKissick wants to be an every down player.
Of course he does, because he's been in the league for forever, and he's like, I want my shot like Chase is about to get. Yeah. But I don't think he's definitely not getting that with Gibson. But in this situation, V-Lock-In, I would go with Zeke and Waller, because I do think that Waller actually does become the number one. I think he knocks Kelsey off the pedestal, and I'm not saying that Kelsey all of a sudden falls and he's, tight end 8 or something. I think he'll finish as the tight end 2. However, when it comes to Zeke versus Gibson, I am a huge fan of Zeke this year. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. Plus, did you see that photo of Zeke? It looks like he's been working out in Cabo again, because that dude is beyond yoked. So I do expect a big year from Zeke, especially with Dak back. I think that people remember what they saw at the end of the season last year where he kind of tailed off. But we put up a awesome graphic in the draft kit, as well as we posted it a couple of times, and it's Zeke and his consistency charts, not only over the last 2 years, but from a year-to-year standpoint. This guy is a top 10 running back year after year after year, and I don't think he'll slow down this year. Some people do have that question. I don't think it'll happen this year. We saw in that beginning of the season, Travis, it was the Zeke show. It wasn't Tony Pollard's show. It was the Zeke show. Zeke got like 80% of the rushing or of the market share there. And so, with it a 17-game season, I do think Tony Pollard might get a couple more carries per game, but that's nothing to scare me away from Zeke. So give me Zeke and Waller. What do you think?
I am with you on that. Although I do just want to point out the McKissick stuff, because this might actually help the Gibson's ADP, because McKissick talking about bulking up. But if you read it, he bulked up from 195 to 198. Johnny, if 3 pounds is bulking up, like, I want to know what that. Then I lost a ton of weight.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, like
Jesus.
that
I
makes
do
me
wanna just say,
excited.
I think Gibson, we've talked about it at length. Like, this is what they did with Gibson. They basically said, we want you to be a good pro pass blocker, all that kind of stuff, right? They did that. I think that Gibson's going to be fine. I think you can draft him at ADP. The question is, do I take the dip at tight end versus do I take the dip at running back? And for me, you take the dip at tight end, which the dip between Kelsey and Waller is not that much, because they tied each other in targets. And we talked about this on the tight end show, that we think Waller actually has more touchdown upside than Kelsey, because he led the league tied with Devontae Adams in red zone targets. So give me Waller or give me death. No, give me Waller or Waller and Zeke over the Gibson and Kelsey, but I'd be fun with either of these combos. I think they're both great.
Yep.
All right, for Johnny Game Time Hicks, I'm Big Travy. We are the Fantasy Whisperers. We're going live for 24 straight hours of mock drafting next weekend. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and you go ahead and hit that notifications button so you know. Otherwise, get that draft kit. It's in the link in our description, and we'll take you guys later, man. Peace.
Peace.
Right here.
Oh, hey, you made it to the end of the video. If you like what you saw and you want to learn how to dominate your own draft and win your own league, head on over to thefantasywhisperers.com and grab your copy of the Fantasy Whisperers Draft Kit today, or click the link in the description below. And if you're still not sold, check out one of these videos.